What happens when you're at the dinner table and family and friends are around? What decisions are you making there? Are these decisions your decisions, or are these decisions being influenced by other people?
If they are actually people who love you and have your best interest at heart, they're going to want to support you. If you explain to them like why you're doing it, most of the whys we hear are like health, confidence, kids. What parent-in-law is going to go around and be like, oh, that's a stupid reason?
The first time you say no, the first time you don't listen to the opinions, This is the hardest one. Once you get over that one, then you just feel confidence that you can. The goal is weight loss. How do we approach these events?
Protein, preload, or having something before you go in can do wonders. If I'm going out for like a meal somewhere, I'll always still have something small before I go. I don't want to be sitting there hungry.
Sticking to one plate of food is going to limit your intake at least to a certain extent. Then potentially you can layer on other things on top of that. Quarter protein, quarter carbs, half veg, whatever it is.
Volume buffer. The goal is to still eat your normal meals at your normal times. I think people try to starve themselves for the entire day before an event thinking, oh cool, I've got all these calories to use up.
Before we even get to the event, I'd go like, once you've decided how you want to wake up on January the 1st, look at the month or 2 month period you've got, plan out what events you've got and which ones are important. You don't have to go to every one.
Okay, so we're coming up to one of the critical parts of the year when it comes to managing your health and fitness. I think we like to think of health and fitness as something you need to be able to manage in all the different seasons, and every season is a little bit different. And the festive season is probably the most condensed period of socials, staff parties, religious celebrations, cultural celebrations, whatever it may be. And it's probably the most condensed period of quote unquote what people feel is mandatory attendance and mandatory ways of celebrating. So it can be very difficult if you are new to a fitness journey or have only been doing it for a few years to understand how to actually navigate it and to avoid waking up on New Year's Day fat, hungover, and regretting a lot of your decisions that you made in the last few weeks. So maybe to kick off this podcast, what does success look like for navigating a festive period for your health and fitness?
I guess if I was to answer that, I'd say waking up on January the 1st, having lived in line with how you wanted to across that period. And that's where it's probably is going to look quite different for different people. And that's why I'd recommend the first step as you start to plan for this time or look ahead to it is almost going straight to that January the 1st and thinking about what position do you want to be in. From a physical perspective, I think it's the easiest way to look at it to start off with. Come January the 1st or beginning of Jan or whatever it is, do you want to have maximized fat loss during that time? Do you want to have maintained during that time? Would you be happy to have gained X amount of weight during that time? And once you can decide on that can then provide you that foundation to then build the plan off and reverse engineer from there. Because what you want to get out of that time in terms of the result from a physical perspective will then dictate how you can act during that time. And so once you've got the goal, you can then pull back and see, okay, if I want to maximize fat loss during that time, I'm going to have to be on it as much as possible. If I'm happy to maintain, I don't have to be quite as on it. And we'll obviously go into what that potentially looks like. But on the other end, if you're happy to accept some fat gain during that time, you know, that you can be even looser. And so that's where you can then start to put a plan in place. So how you wake up on January the 1st, you can then look back and say, have I achieved what I set out on the 1st of December, 1st of November, whenever it is you're planning this from? And did you tick that yes or no? And if you do it from like a body composition perspective, so either like on the scale or something like that, you can make it really black and white to see if whether you did achieve that or not.
In what scenarios would having more fat be worth doing for this period?
If you just finished a photo shoot and you're completely shredded, and having some body fat come back on is probably a healthy thing. Okay. But that is going to be in the 0.0002% of the population.
I think though, maybe not for everyone. I'm sure there are some people out there who would say, you know what, the trade-off for me for having more social events across this month of the year is worth half a kilo of weight gain, let's just say. And I don't think anyone can, I don't think anyone can argue that, because if that's a conscious trade-off that you're willing to make, that's cool, I think. But it's just being really aware that and it's being really conscious of those trade-offs. What we don't want to do is say, I want to maximize weight loss and then come out of it half a kilo heavier or more. That's not good. But if you consciously said, I'm happy to do more social, and it's the same, you can apply this to a holiday or whatever it is. Health and fitness doesn't have to be that number one. Maybe it gets pulled down for a life experience. But obviously, if you live like that all the time,
it's conscious.
That's how you end up, overweight. But yeah, if it's a short period, as long as it's conscious, then, for some people, probably not that many people listen to this, but that might be a worthwhile trade-off.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer.
I think regardless of the physical goal, regardless if it's maintenance, fat loss, muscle building, whatever it is, what you still need to practice control. Everyone's goal throughout this period should be to be in control of your choices more than you were the previous year, especially for people who are coming up. Let's just say you've embarked on your transformation journey. This is going to be your first time going through a holiday period where the goal is fat loss. Then you are going to have to do things that you haven't done before. Okay. You're going to have to act in a way that's in accordance with the person that you eventually want to be. Because from all the success stories that we've seen, we have never seen one person who has achieved their checkpoint and stayed in shape forever who hasn't changed how they handle social scenarios. It's simply a given. It has to happen. And that's that may be a hard to swallow pill for some people, but it's what is absolutely necessary. And I think for those who are listening who are prioritizing fat loss during this period and do want to make the most of it, just think of it as an experiment for you as well, to be like, what strategies can I implement? What can I do? How can I navigate these things? And this is where having a coach is super helpful, because we can help you navigate through this period. It's it's learning how to navigate socials is a skill that must be learned. Trying to do it on your own and trying to go all gung-ho, I think, is very, very difficult, which is, where us experts can come in and really, really help you throughout this period.
What I was thinking about when you guys were talking is, one is the conscious awareness thing, and one is the control element. How do you avoid the justification of, I'm just going to wait till January now, so I'm going to consciously gain a couple of pounds. Doesn't really matter. I'll try again from January. And the second thing is justifying. How do you justify control? Like, is it, I've had a couple, I'm going to go for a couple of beers. If I have a couple of beers, then I'm in control. Or when you're in the moment, you're like, I didn't eat that much, and I felt very much in control. And it can be very like, you end up just sort of making excuses with yourself. How do you sort of break that element of it? Because I think a lot of people listening could be like, well, this is kind of like a free pass now. I've set myself the goal of like a couple of kilos by Jan. So if I wake up a couple of kilos heavier, I've done it in control.
That's taking the message completely the wrong way.
Not to throw a curveball here, but I'm just playing out scenarios where I think are very real for people. Of like, any people want any reason to delay taking action and to delay taking control of where there's potential issues with gaining a couple of pounds.
Something that I'll be looking at just real quick before you chime in, Ed, would be when I talk about control here, it's more about, okay, if that is your conscious decision that you want to make that happen, so be it. But I would push back on that and go, well, what happens when you're at the dinner table and family and friends are around? What decisions are you making there? Are these decisions your decisions, or are these decisions being influenced by other people? So what I'm saying is control is being able to make the best decision based on the goals that you want to achieve, despite what is sort of happening around you. And again, if there's all this food on offer, right? In my opinion, control is being able to consciously make the decision to be like, these foods right now, they don't serve my goal of waking up leaner on January 1st. So I'm consciously going to make a decision to not have these foods, if that's the choice that you want to make. That, in my opinion, is control. And it's more about, were you able to potentially enjoy like a small bite of a dessert that you see once a year that your grandma makes or what have you? Can you have a slice, enjoy it with family and friends, and be content with that? Not divulge the entire cake or go into the pantry when no one's looking and start binge eating. That's sort of what I mean by control. It's control, in my opinion, is not just being abstinent and being like, I only eat chicken and broccoli from my Tupperware at Christmas. That's not control. That's idiotic. Control is being able to make the best decision given the circumstance and be able to control yourself when all this food is around. That, in my opinion, is control.
Are you going to chime in or anything?
I think I was just going to say that if you want to wait till Jan and it's conscious decision, then like you can do that. But just when you do make that decision, just look at the consequence of that as well. In that, if you're 6 months away from hitting your checkpoint or getting in shape, whatever it is, and you gain weight over November and December, you're going to have not only delayed that timeline, but also elongated it, because you've then added more weight that you're going to have to lose. So it's then just that trade-off of those beers or whatever it is. Are they worth then having to diet for an extra couple of months? So it's now gone from a 6-month fat loss phase to an 8-month phase. Are you happy to start January in a worse position on all fronts, from a health perspective, a fitness perspective, whatever, that why is, I want to be a better parent. Well, you're kind of moving in the wrong direction for that for 2 months. If you're okay with that, that's okay. But whatever your reason to get into it, you're making it worse to then start later. And that's obviously your decision, but like, is that what you want? Because I think often people will make a decision like, I'll start in January, or I don't mind gaining some weight across Christmas. They're only looking at the pro because they're like, because I want the beers, I want the dessert, I want this. But like, are you also just seeing the trade-off? Because don't then wake up on January the 1st crying because you can't fit into any of the gym kit that you haven't put on since October, or that you're now got even longer till your checkpoint, or that before you used to get out of breath when you played with your kid, now you can't even get off the sofa to play with you. Like whatever it is, whatever that negative is, like just don't complain about that, because that has to be a conscious part of that decision.
Yeah. Are you happy to make that conscious decision? That's the kicker there.
So let's switch gears and now assume that people listening to this want to make progress in this period, whether that's maintenance or whether that's agile weight loss, if that's the goal. What are some key concepts we need to understand before we dive into some of the more tactical approach to events and different festivities? Because I think Christmas and just this festive season as a whole is wrapped up into a lot of our identities, and we have a lot of associations with what we do at these times. Like if it's Christmas, we have the cake, we have the pudding, we have the cheese board all in one. If it's Diwali, we have all these sweets boxes for 5 days in a row, or whatever it is. Like there's certain associations that we've done since we were kids. That for the first time, it may be the first time we're trying to break those associations. So let's dive into some key concepts that need to be understood before we dive into the nitty-gritty tactics.
Yeah. So I think your intention and overall mindset are going to be absolutely pivotal here. I think a lot of people are going to be approaching this period of feeling like they are restricted, or it's like, no, I can't have this, I can't have that. No, my meal plan says I can't have it, or whatever. I think this black or white thinking is one of the biggest detriments to people's success over this festive period, because you need to understand that you're not going to be able to stick to your plan 100%. And that is 100% okay. Okay. Learning how to live in the gray zone. And when I say gray zone is, partaking in these events, understanding that it's not about the food only. There are other ways that you can actually enjoy the event, weirdly enough, but also not going in with the mindset of, I can't have this, I can't have that, but more of the mindset of, I'm choosing not to have XYZ because it's not aligning with my current goals. There's a huge difference between saying, I'm going to opt for the chicken salad, or I'm going to omit the sweets that I normally would have every single year of my life, that I have been having every single year of my life, that's got me to the position that I am. That's probably something to think about too. You spent 40 years having all these foods across the festive period. You've used food as a celebration for the last 40 years. Can you go maybe one festive period with a different mindset and be like, you know what? I'm actually happy to potentially restrict, I don't want to use that word, but restrict over the next few months so that then I can have freedom for the rest of my life. I think trading one festive period in that way for like long-term freedom and flexibility, I think is a fantastic trade-off. And we've seen it. People dedicate themselves for 6 to 12 months and really go all in and do the best they possibly can from a fat loss perspective. They can set themselves up forever, right? What is literally like a one festive period where you sort of don't go as hard as you normally used to go? I think that's a pretty good trade-off. But it's more about the mentality of, it's not that you're not allowed to have any, you're allowed to eat whatever you like. You can do whatever you like. You're an adult. No one is telling you that you cannot have a certain food item. It's about making the choice to not have it. When you reframe things in that perspective, funnily enough, people do actually end up making better decisions because they feel like they have come up with that decision themselves. Okay. We all are wired like this. We are all more inclined to do something that we think that we've come up with, like we hate being told what to do. If someone tells you, hey, Akash, you're not allowed to have this food at this event at all because it's going to make you fat or what have you. That doesn't work. We have to find a way that's going to make you say, I don't want to have this food because I want to be able to run the following day, because running and training is important to me. I want to be able to perform the next day. So I don't want to have those foods, and I know it's not going to serve me well. So it's choosing various things, not feeling restricted. There's a huge difference there. So that's going to be one of the big things.
If you go in with the right intention and you have this goal of that you've already set, you've had the intention, you've done the work going into it, but the family pressure when you get to the event dawns on you, the external environments are all fighting against you. What happens in that moment, and how can you equip yourself for that? Because I think that's where, from my experience and from what we've seen with our members, that's the hardest bit. It's where the mother-in-law's over your shoulder wondering why you're only eating a little bit, or when you say no to a dessert, or whatever the different scenario may be. I think we put a questionnaire out to our members recently asking, what their struggles are on the festive period. And I think an overwhelming response was, I've got family coming over that we haven't seen in ages. I've got these events. How do I do it with my friends and social circles, etc.? Even if you go in with all the best intentions, how do you navigate that external, like overwhelming sometimes pressure?
Yeah. Ed, do you want to go this one or?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing is making them aware that you're going to be acting a little bit differently. Now, I don't think you have to be the person who just talks about their health and fitness the whole time, and kind of person that gives everyone in the fitness industry a bad name. But just giving them a heads up, like if your mother-in-law, your mom, or whatever it is, normally cooks this huge, your favorite dessert, whatever it is, and you just don't say anything, turn up, and then just say you don't want it. I think it's fair enough for her to be a bit pissed off or a bit like, what's going on? But just give her a heads up. And it doesn't have to be, these are my macros, and I'm doing this, and like I'm trying to spike protein synthesis at this time, and like it doesn't have to be that. It just has to be going to like, look,
it does.
It does.
Who's saying that?
I don't know, but
Ed's talking about something he did before, didn't he?
Yeah. What, you said you haven't talked to your mum through thermodynamics.
But that's what Ed did. Ed did at his first in-laws, basically, is he told his mother-in-law about protein synthesis.
Yeah, well, now she loves me. So it doesn't have to be really, granite detail, but just look, I'm trying to shift some weight at the moment, and you can go into whys as well if you want to, if you feel comfortable, if you think it's going to help. But that, at least it gives them a heads up. It helps them like understand what's going to happen, and they're not going to go in and buy a load of crates of beer for you if you're now not drinking or whatever it is. But also, if they are actually people who love you and have your best interest at heart, they're going to want to support you. And so, although some of it might be a little bit strange to them or a bit of a change, if you explain to them like why you're doing it, and like most of the whys we hear are like health, confidence, kids, like. What parent or parent-in-law is going to go around and be like, oh, that's a stupid reason or whatever? Like, it's like, I want to be around to help bring up your grandkids for longer. It's like, they're probably going to be on board with that. So that would be the first thing I'd say. But then go in with a plan, so then not what you need to stick to, because then it means that when you are getting offered things or there's pressure on you, it's easier to know what you've said you're going to do versus any deviations from that. If you go in with a very grey or fluffy plan, it can then be quite easy when the pressure comes on to then start to justify some of these things. But then the third point is also then just being aware of just where these opinions are coming from, and just how much value they have and how much value you place on them. And in all areas of life, outside of health and fitness, whatever it is, everyone has opinions on things. There's loud opinions as part of freedom of speech and everything. But you don't have to value everyone's opinion. And so when your mother-in-law, who's overweight, has no idea about health and fitness, makes a comment about health and fitness, you don't have to give a shit about what it is. Like, who cares if someone overweight tells me about my nutrition or my training? Maybe they're an expert and maybe they had an injury and they've put on this weight. 99.9% of the time that's going to happen. It's probably not the case. It's probably that they don't really know that much about it, or as much as me. Like, I'm not going to listen to that. Yeah. Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's coming from either like poor understanding of things, jealousy, because if you are losing weight, you're probably achieving something that most of the population want to achieve and have been struggling with. It can be hard to do that. It can be hard to see other people achieving goals that you've consistently failed at. So whatever the reason it is coming from, like, you don't have to value that opinion. It doesn't mean you don't have to value that person, but it's just like valuing opinions from certain people. Like for me, I would recommend most people value my opinion on transformation, but I would also say don't value my opinion on virtually anything else. Like, it's not going to be that useful. So
me too.
Like, go to your accountant, listen to what they say about numbers, but don't listen to them about what they have to say about how to fix your car. Like, go to your mechanic for that. Like, care about certain opinions. You don't have to care about everyone's opinion. And so if there is a comment or whatever it is, yeah, you can combat it with the reason you're doing it and blah, blah, blah. But you also just don't really need to care. And I found as it's my kind of journey's progressed, like, I find myself actually just combating stuff less and I just don't care. Okay, this fat person thinks I'm too skinny. Like, you know what? I think they're too fat. I don't need to say that. I just don't need to worry about that opinion and just crack on. I know what I'm achieving. I know my life's improving, whatever it is. I wouldn't want to swap shoes. So, what I mean? It doesn't matter to me.
The first one's always the hardest one. Like, the first time you say no, the first time you sort of don't listen to the opinions, is the hardest one. Once you get over that one, then you just build confidence that you can do it. And because you've now done it for
so funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I just had a member in one of the cohorts, like a new member, and he said the exact same thing. He's always been known as the party guy, someone who loves to drink. And then he met a friend for a catch up, and he just told his friend, hey, this is what I'm trying to do with my life. Do you mind if we go do something else? And the friend was super supportive. But the kicker here was he actually said he was surprised by his friend's reaction because he didn't expect him to respond so positively, And again, I think it's this idea of that, we think that we are the spotlight. Like, we think that everyone really cares about us. Or do you think people are going to remember what you ate or didn't eat at that festive period? Do you think people are driving home in their car being like, oh, I can't believe Akash didn't have that food. Like, what's wrong with him? We're going to disown him. Maybe we just don't know any better, right? But when was the last time you guys did that? Did you ever drive home and just be like, you know what? I can't believe X person didn't eat that. How rude.
Interesting. I do it the other way around. If someone has like crazily bad habits, I'm like, I find it so weird.
Judgmental AV.
I find it so weird. I'm like, how do they do that?
It's impressive, right? But the point we're trying to make here is that, like, it's not as scary as you may think it is. And maybe it is initially scary because you have always been this person. You've identified as this person, but you'd be surprised how many things people do just because everyone else is doing it. And remember, you wanting to improve yourself, be fitter, be healthier, everyone wants these things, even though they won't tell you that. They all want it. And this, I think a lot of the nastiness that comes from, these comments is from people trying to pull you back down to their level. They see you trying to achieve something. Yeah, as Ed said, it's not easy to do. It's really, really hard to do. And especially being able to practice this sort of behavior during the festive period, it's admirable. It's hard. And if you get those sort of comments, I think it's important to understand that usually, yes, it's coming from a place that has no validation from an opinion perspective. It's also potentially coming from a place of, I don't want to see you succeed. And I hear this is quite common in the UK. I think it's called like tall poppy syndrome, where people don't like to see others succeed and they want to pull them down.
That's big. So
I just wouldn't. Yeah. I've heard that actually, so if you come across people like that, as Ed said, I don't care what you say, like, you're fat and overweight. I'd rather be in my shoes than your shoes. Your opinion is invalid, but again, that's a skill, and it takes a while to sort of to learn that.
What have been your journeys with the festive season? Like, and I don't know if you were joking when you said like the muscle protein synthesis, but have you done?
Yeah, that was the exaggeration. To be
what are some of the crazy stuff you've done that you look back and think, oh, that's cringe?
My cringy stuff would be, I was very much someone who would I've been in the one that I think this is cringy, but everyone seems to think, oh, I'm an all or nothing person. It's like that's what everyone thinks they are. But so I was very much that. And for me, when I used to overeat or binge, whatever it is, it was emotionally linked, but it was never negatively emotionally linked. Like for me, if I was upset or something bad happened, I would tighten up on everything rather than binging. But for like celebratory stuff, that's when I'd be like, oh, like let's make the most of this. And so for me, I'd go in pretty hard on Christmas with regards to food, and fall more into that. Yeah, I'm the big eater, or I'm like the party guy, or whatever it is. I mean, in terms of like cringy stuff that I would then do to try and balance that out would be, I was necking apple cider vinegar before Christmas dinners, and burning my throat out so I couldn't even taste it properly. But like stupid stuff like that to try and balance it out. So I've done all that stupid stuff, but I haven't done the whole Tupperware at a Christmas dinner or anything like that. So I've done the extreme kind of just overdoing it, and then in more recent years I've just kind of found a bit more of a balanced or an approach that leaves me still having as much fun, but also not, having it with any regret afterwards, really.
Yeah. What about you?
I was relatively similar. I would do a lot of like fasting in the morning, make room for the big lunch that I'm going to have and all that type of thing. And yeah, or, try to burn a ton of calories the day after. Or I've done all this stuff that I tell people not to do. And I just think it never leads to anything productive. I think it's moronic, not moronic, but I understand where it comes from. But again, it's very similar to Ed. It's more of, okay, cool. Once got the family around, and once I used to get going, I couldn't stop, that type of thing. It's just like, oh well, I've had this, may as well have the whole thing. And
that was me 100%.
Yeah, and I think like I was known for being quite a big eater back then, and even to this day though, I have to really combat that, because I get the same comments, right? Oh, Ivan, are you okay? You look a bit too skinny. You look a bit, and it's just like, I do a lot of cardio, do a lot of gymnastics. I want to be lean. Leave me alone, So, but and again, like now, when I go home for lunches and whatnot, my brother now, he's the big eater, and everyone's just like, oh, awesome, look how much you can eat, this and that. And then everyone will sort of be like, hey, Ivan, is everything okay? Are you okay? And I have to sort of work with that. And again, I come from a family where, food is a big thing. It's part of our culture. You know what I mean? So, but again, it's learning how to combat that. And especially because I used to be that person who used to eat a lot. I used to value being a big person. It's just like, I'm just refeeding, just filling the glycogen stores. Nonsense. It was all nonsense. It was all just me not being able to control myself in these situations,
Yeah. I was probably definitely definitely the cheat meal guy. Oh, this is the cheat meal period.
You can find enough justification, can't you?
Spark the metabolism.
Charles Poliquin used to be really big on going hard at Christmas, didn't he? He said you stick to your plan 363 days of the year, and then there's Christmas and like your birthday or whatever it was, and he was basically promoting going hard. But the fact is, he would be sent off the premise of being 100% on the other 363 days. But it was like, actually, I'm pretty good most times. So yeah, Charles Poliquin said I need to go hard. So yeah, I need to go hard.
Well, that's what I used to do. I used to do Boxing Day hill sprints. I used to go to the same hill. I used to just pound those hill sprints the day after. Because I fueled up.
You're burning like 300 calories.
Yeah.
and you do your hammy, so you can't train legs for next month either.
Yeah. But funnily enough, from that perspective, because we are, quote unquote, on it every single day, we could do that now on the Christmas and just go crazy and go wild. But what I've noticed, I don't know about you guys as well, but there is no desire to do that. And I think that's the key thing here. Like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it's quite interesting, because now technically I'm in a better position to have this massive refeed and just go ham. But I'm like, I don't want to do that, because it doesn't align with the person I am. I can't fathom that idea anymore,
Well, I think it's also, for me, because I've had issues with food many years ago, I don't like the feeling of being so full that you can't, it feels like you feel like you got a glass shard in your stomach. And I think because of that, I just don't want that feeling. And when you eat, there's always a tipping point, right? And you can know, like, where if you eat a bit more, you're just gonna feel that log in your stomach, and it's just horrible, right? And I just don't want that feeling. That messes your digestion up. You don't sleep, feel shit. And I think, and then you also feel regretful, because you're like, this just feels horrible, and then you just a vicious cycle in your head. And I think because I don't want that feeling, I never push myself like that anymore. I just don't do it.
Yeah,
it's been a few years.
You don't have the desire to want to do it. You know what I mean? You're not like fighting this inner demon where you're like sitting there going, oh, I want to just destroy all that food. Like, I don't know about you guys. I never have that feeling anymore.
I think also when you live a healthy lifestyle for many, many years, and your palate just generally just changes.
Yes.
Even when you go on a holiday, like if you go on holiday, after 3-4 days, I'm craving my normal food. Not because I'm eating wildly different foods, but it's just like I just don't want to eat foods that have sauces in it. I don't want to eat foods that are lathered in oil. You know, when it's sometimes a bit out of your control. And you just want that normal, quote unquote, clean feeling. And I think that feeling is something you just like, right? You just
exactly
you fall in love with it, and
distorted. It's just distorted.
Yeah.
It's distorted eating.
When you know what good feels like, you don't want to jeopardize that. And I think that's probably why I've come the other way. Whereas before, it was like mum would be like, "Oh, what desserts do you want?" I was like, "Oh yeah, get this chocolate brownie, get that chocolate pudding," and then it's deplete for 5 days and go for it. Then I wake up jacked, have the best pumps in the next day. My digestion's in pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get tactical then. So how do we approach these events? We set the intention, we set the goal, set the why. Let's assume the goal is weight loss. So someone here is the goal is weight loss, and then we'll kind of go into if the goal is weight maintenance or muscle building. What are some tactical things to apply when you go to different festive events, staff parties, whatever it may be, from a food perspective?
I literally think that there is no situation that couldn't benefit from you having something small but substantial before the event. And this is what I like to call like a protein preload. It doesn't have to be only protein. Anything that's sort of protein and fiber rich, I think can do absolute wonders. And I know people are like, oh, but I want to save the calories for the meal. The way I see it is that you go into some of these events not hungry if you can get you can make 150 to 200 calories very satiating if you want to, if you select the right vegetables, the right protein source, all this type of stuff. And that 150 to 200 calorie sort of meal can save you like 1,000 to 2,000 calories in the evening, because you've now gone into this event. You're not starving. You're not relying on when the food's coming out, what type of food is coming out. We've all been there. You know, your friend says, hey, Ed, we're going to go meet for dinner at 7. Are you eating at 7 ever? No. You get there, could be 7:30, could be 8, 8:30. By the time everyone comes, by the time everyone orders, you never know what time you're actually eating. Because let's just say you plan to eat dinner at 7. You're like, I'll just go have dinner at 7. Now it's been 2 hours, hour and a half since you thought you were going to eat, meaning extra ravenous. Those starters are now going to look a lot more appetizing. I think it's much harder to say no when you're hungry. I think this is where people mess up, because all these little starters are coming out and you're like, oh, I'm really peckish. I'll have one of these, one of that. And then it's just like, now you have that sort of black or white mentality. It's like, well, I've already had this, may as well have this, may as well order this massive main to dessert. And it's all done. So I think I personally can't think of any. I still do it to this day. If I know that I'm going out for like lunch or for dinner, and I'm not even in fat loss, I just don't like. I just want to be satiated.
I love that. I
don't like to rely. Yeah. So I'll always, if I'm going out for like a meal somewhere, I'll always still have something small before I go, just because I can never predict what's going to happen at these places, and I don't want to be sitting there hungry, being like, when's the food coming, this and that. So I think in most situations, I would say virtually for every situation, a protein preload or having something before you go in can do wonders.
I'd say it's especially important if you're a vegetarian or vegan, or you're going to a vegetarian or vegan event.
Yes.
Because I've noticed I am I'm massively bought into this idea now since I've turned vegan, because if you go to events that you're not in control of, the chance of you getting any protein is going to be very slim. And I went to a wedding recently. On the first night, they didn't do this, and all they had was just carbs. And you just feel like you're feeding a bottomless pit in that you just never feel full, and you just think, oh, I'll have a bit more. And the next day, I was like, I can't go into this event knowing. And then that event they did have protein, but annoyingly, but I had the protein powder, I had a bit of peanut butter, and I went into the event feeling quite full already. And then I knew if I just have carbs, it's fine because I've got a balanced approach in the day. But I think if you're vegetarian or vegan, it's got to be done. If you're going to a vegetarian event, you just can't rely on the fact that there's going to be protein. And if it is, it might just be a bit of lentils, So you're getting like 5 grams, if anything.
Exactly.
And if you're getting,
so
if
I
you're
think
getting
it's
anything
a win-win.
else, exactly.
Yeah. So that'd be one of my definitely go-to strategies. Some other ones, again, I like to use potentially like a volume buffer. This doesn't have to be anything complicated or anything crazy. It's literally just, okay, for the majority of your meals for that day, they're going to be made up of pretty much protein and veg and some fruit. The goal for all these, the goal is to still eat your normal meals at your normal times. Like I cannot stress this enough. Don't try to buffer excessively. I think people try to starve themselves for the entire day before an event thinking, oh, cool, I've got all these calories to use up. You will 99% of the time, you will go over those predicted calories and more because you've gone into this event super, super hungry. So I still recommend keeping your normal eating schedule throughout the day, but just removing the carbs and the fats if that's what you want to do, and just adding more veg and fruit and whatnot. So you're pretty much just doing a protein veg load throughout the entire day, so that when you do get to the event, you have some spare calories to work with or play with. This doesn't mean that you just go crazy and go mental. All it does is just allow you to go to this event and not have to worry so much. You know what I mean? And knowing that you've got all your protein covered for the day, you've got a good amount of fiber in there. Cool. If that means you're going to like an Italian restaurant that again only serves pretty much carbohydrates, okay, have a small dish of pasta that you can share with someone if that's what you want to do. Or if you go into a pizza place, you could have like a slice or two of pizza, and that's not going to be the end of the world, you know? So this sort of approach I think they're very simple, very, very simple, and they can be very, very effective because it cancels out one of the biggest things that I think impedes people is hunger, feeling too hungry going into an event. I think it's the downfall of pretty much most people. And then they have one or two things, they have a drink as well, boom, floodgates open up, you know? So I think those two strategies, I just can't see them not working. Like I don't think, I think most people should incorporate them when they can. I wouldn't even use the volume buffer too much. I would literally just eat your meals as per normal, have the protein buffer before the event, and just go there and do what you make sensible choices. And again, a lot of the time you have to ask yourself a series of questions such as, do I even have to eat at this event? You know what I mean? You don't actually have to eat at every single event you go to, you know? So you have to also work out the logistics of what the event entails. Is it a sit down dinner? Is it like a cocktail party where everyone's just walking around giving finger food? If that's the case, you don't have to eat anything there.
Yeah.
Just walk around and socialize, you know?
The other one is the tough one is when you go into an event and the conversation is going to be terrible. It's going to be small talk, and you just check out and you use food to just like kind of be your company for the night. That's a very easy trap to fall into, where you just think, you're hungry for like real conversation, but in the end, because you're hungry for food anyway, you just eat. And that can
talk to the food.
Yeah. That. I mean, I've definitely been there in the past where the most interesting thing there is the food. So you're like, I may just focus on that. But yeah, that's just something to tune into, because if you're not aware of that happening, it can lead down a slippery slope.
Yeah. In those situations, it could be worthwhile maybe just holding on to something. Maybe you just want something to hold. So that could be like even a diet soda. That could even just be some water. I think that's what people want. They feel comfort in holding on to something, whether it's food, whether it's a drink, or just man up, woman up, or what have you, and go talk to people.
Well, I mean, that is a big thing. Like just holding a drink, being able to hold a drink is because you can feel a bit lost if you're at that cocktail party and you're just walking around with walking around from person to person, saying nothing, doing nothing, holding nothing.
Yeah, but you don't have to be that person. And I always talk about this, like, AV, I think a while back, didn't you do a process phase, and your goal was to sort of make people think that you weren't even dieting, right? Was that one of your goals? Do you remember?
Yeah. It's 2017 I did that one.
How fantastic is that? Like, people don't even know that you're dieting. And I think a big part of that is you go to these social events, and if you're cheerful, if you're social, if you're a joy to be around, I think those are the things that matter far more than what you do or don't eat at an event.
It's very hard though, very hard doing that. It's because you've got to like just keep it all internal. But also it's the hunger.
Yeah.
It's just fighting the hunger when you're out and about. And obviously this is I think we should probably frame this in that this is for people that are trying to achieve extreme conditions. So if you're going for a photo shoot, if you're going for, extreme weight loss, then that's the case. For the average person trying to lose 1 to 2 pounds a week, and they've still got a lot to lose, then it's probably not the case. You're not going to feel as much hunger as you probably think you are. A lot of your hunger is probably
mental.
Yeah, mental hunger.
Yeah,
hungry for conversation.
But it's also breaking free from what you used to do. Like, think about it. A lot of people, they'll go to these events, and that's all it used to be. It used to be about the food. When a big love in your life is food, which a lot of people have that, I'm like, that's a bit of a slippery slope. Like, if food brings you like that much joy in your life, I'm like, well, obviously there has to be some areas that are lacking for you to get that much joy from food, but that's a different conversation. Yeah. But I think you have to learn to detach from that identity where it's all about the food and it's this and it's that. And it doesn't have to be that way. It just doesn't. Okay. And again, you have to be brave enough, bold enough to break that mold, whether it's in your own social circle, whether it's within your own community. It can be done, but again, it's going to take a bit of oomph.
Okay, so we've got a couple of tactics there. The preload strategies, volume buffer. We mentioned the 1 plate rule. Have you comment to that yet?
Not yet. Ed, do you want to take out the 1 plate rule?
Yeah. So if it is an event that you do need to eat out, or you've chosen to eat at, is then just putting some guidelines in place to give you some guidelines or some guidance for how much you should be eating and potentially what you're eating. Because as we said, when you get into that event, you're going to be tempted by these foods that look even better than the foods at home, smell even better around people who are probably overdoing it. So temptation is going to be higher. So having some guidelines that you can hold yourself accountable to, and the more black and white they can be, the better, I think, because then it's very clear I am sticking to them, or I'm making a conscious decision to move away from them. So anything grey, especially if you're early on in the journey, I would definitely just avoid, because you can then just start to justify things too much. And a good example of that is what we call the 1 plate rule. So it's sticking to 1 plate of food. There's no real grey areas. You fill that 1 plate. Now, obviously, you could end up piling it sky high, but as long as you stick to that 1 plate, it's going to limit your intake at least to a certain extent. Then potentially you can layer on other things on top of that, in terms of potentially it's quarter of that plate is made up from a lean protein source, the rest is made up from fruit and veg, or that can obviously then be adapted. Maybe it's quarter protein, quarter carbs, half veg, whatever it is. The exact points of it is going to be individual, but having those clear guidelines, so when you go in, you've got something to go off. Because a big mistake I see is people either trying to track when they're out, which is just the biggest waste of time ever, I think. Now, if you're out and go to a Nando's or something, okay, they sometimes have the calories there. It's not going to be that accurate, but some kind of ballpark figure. If you're at a relative's house, or you're at a party where it's just been like hosted in a buffet style, you have no idea. You have no idea how much cream they added into the sauce, how much oil. Yeah. And so trying to track that is just a waste of time. And I'm saying that having, been in this industry for a long time, probably better food awareness than most people listen to this, like trying to guess the calories, even just the portion size, it's just a waste of time. So I would definitely recommend, rather than trying to work out those numbers, and this is where sometimes people are like, oh yeah, so I ate out and it was this buffet, so I couldn't really, but I know I stayed within my calories. It's like, no, you don't. Like, unless you swapped out a 500 calorie meal for like a couple of pieces of lettuce, okay, then we know, but chances are you haven't. And the other mistake I see people making a lot is then just trying to replicate their meal plan, if that's what they're normally following, on a meal out. Oh, I normally have 1 plate. It's normally like chicken breast and then like half a plate of rice and then like whatever. Like, you can create that plate again, but the rice has probably been cooked in some oil or something this time, because the chef is trying to make it taste as nice as possible. It's probably some more oil or butter or something, whatever, in the chicken. The vegetables have been cooked. Like, there's all of these extra calories in there. So although you're trying to make the plate look exactly the same as home, it's got, however many more calories. So I would recommend not trying to be accurate, because you just accept if you're eating out like that, it's not going to be accurate. Just going with a guideline approach. And that can then sort you for any occasion. If you get to an event where the options aren't great. So like Akash said, if you're vegan and you go to, or you get head into a vegan event or whatever it is, you've done the protein preload where you've ticked off protein. Well then, okay, well, I'm just going to try and stick predominantly, potentially this could be your guideline. One plate, I'm just going to try and stick predominantly to fruit and veg, or maybe one carb source and then the rest of fruit and veg, whatever it is. And maybe that isn't amazing. Maybe the veg is dressed in oil. Maybe the carb source is not the carb source that do you ideally want, or whatever it is. But you're in that situation, so you just got to do the best of it. Like that's just life. It's the same as getting to the gym. Your first exercise is leg press, but someone's on it. You just got to work around it. Like maybe you do hamstring curls and then you go back to leg press, whatever it is. Like it's not, you have to sometimes just be slightly fluid with that. But if you've got those guidelines in place, such as the 1 plate rule, you can at least make sure that you're behaving in a good way. And that will help you in terms of physical progress, but also it will help start teaching you to act in a more health conscious way, which is actually more important for the long term. Like if you follow those guidelines, you nail them, you'll go up half a pound or like a pound the next day or something. That I would still be more happy than if you didn't follow them and you ended up maintaining weight or dropped weight, because half a pound, that's going to come and go, whatever. But gaining these experiences of handling events in a positive way is so big for the long term. Like to be able to do this effortlessly without any stress for the long term, you need to gain these experiences. And the more you can gain them, or the faster you can gain them, the sooner you're going to be nailing it. And that's where I think it's a really good argument, going back to that point earlier, of not delaying to Jan, because you've actually got an amazing opportunity to build up some really good experience here. And like it took me ages because I had a terrible approach and I was dotting in and out. But when I now see clients who go in, like buy into this from day one, sometimes they've nailed it in like a couple of months or like 3 months. I'm like, how have you done this so quick? But it's because they've actually just done a good plan, like actually had like a proper plan in place. And then they've just executed it 5-6 times across, let's say 3 months. And now it's just how they do it. And it's just like, it still shocks me sometimes because I'm like, man, it's took me so long, but it's because I just didn't have that actual like good approach to it.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of a mic drop there.
Yeah. It's so many good points there. And again, learning how to navigate this stuff, not avoid it, is the key. You cannot avoid all such situations for the rest of your life. Yeah, maybe you have to scale some of them back when you're pushing really hard from a fat loss perspective. That's understandable. And I agree. You do not have to say yes to every single event. I think it's another big kicker as well. But you do need to learn how to navigate through them and not avoid them. And the best way to do that is, as Ed said, is to get the practice and get the reps in. Like you have to put yourself in these situations and practice the skills that we talk about. And this is why, having us in your corner to help you come up with a plan as well is super valuable. One of the biggest things that we do here is going back and forth with our members to come up with a strategy that allows them to handle these type of situations. And because we just know how important it is. And Ed, I think you touched on a really good point earlier, which was just because your scale weight is a little bit up the following day doesn't mean that the choices you made were a failure. If you consciously made these good decisions that you knew were in line with your goals, you made the best out of that situation, and your scale weight went up a little bit the following day, that in my opinion is still a massive win. Because on the flip side, if we're only using scale weight, okay, what if you just ate nothing, you got drunk, you drank a liter of vodka or what have you? Okay, cool. You wake up the following day, you're lighter. Okay, fantastic. So every time I go out, I just need to drink a liter of vodka and I'll get weight loss, right? No, no. That's again, it's the wrong metric to be using in this specific scenario.
So if you're sitting here wondering how this all works and you want to time collapse your results to get ahead of the competition and wake up on New Year's Day in the best shape of your life, just go to www.rntfitness.co.uk/pro and you can send us an application and we'll see if you're a good fit. But back to the tactics. What should you not do during this period? Like what are the things? What
could I just add one more tactic just before maybe like. I think all of the stuff we said around like the actual events themselves is really good. But I think before we even get to the event, I'd go like, once you've decided how you want to wake up on January the 1st, is then look at the month or 2 month period you've got and then plan out what events you've got and which ones are important. As Ivan's touched on a few times, you don't have to go to every one. But I think you can put them into 3 categories. Like category 1, really important to me, want to just maximize the experience, whatever it is. Category 2, like I need to go, but it's not that important to me. And then category 3, like I don't actually want to go. and then start mapping out how many of those you've each got, and then start to look at it. Because if you want to lose weight, as much as we can put good plans in place, it's not going to be as optimal as just sticking to your plan normal. So if you want to make some progress over this time, anything in that category 3 you don't want to go to, I would just cut, unless you actually like have to from work. Like, and that is not only just from a physical progress perspective, but also just that's a big skill for just life moving forward. Life. Like not doing shit you don't want to do the whole time. You don't have to do stuff.
I think each year that goes by, I think my Christmas celebration list has gone down to like minimum, like it's less than a handful.
I know. I don't even know if I'm doing Christmas Day this year now. But then option number 2 is like you could probably need to go to, but it's not like a huge event for you. So maybe it is like, I don't know, some people that you outside, I don't know, someone at work or someone like that you probably need to show your face, but it's not like a big event or that you really get. Then go, but like don't drink, maybe eat before you go, just turn up, show your face, have a couple of diet drinks. That's cool. And then maybe on like say Christmas Day, and maybe you have another couple of traditions or whatever it is, those events you're like, no, I want to go, I want to actually eat there. Now still implement the strategies like Ivan's gone through already, but those are the ones maybe you partake in a bit more, where it's like you just have that slight trade-off, because I'm happy to slow down fat loss a little bit because this is a really important event for me, or a really important day, or whatever it is. But the worst thing you can do is just slow down progress for stuff you don't even want to do, that add nothing to your life. And it's like, yeah, you have a boring, like sometimes we just have to have a boring evening, but you have a boring evening and you've also jeopardized your progress. Like that's just the worst of everything, I think. So I would look at what you've then got, plan that out. And if you find over that next month or 2 months, you've got loads of those category 1 events where really important to you, you really have to engage fully in them. One, I'd question whether that's really the case, but then also then just go back and say, okay, well, maybe is fat loss actually realistic right now? Maybe maintenance has to be the goal then, or whatever it is. And once you've dotted between those 2, then I think you can then go into the individual events and start implementing those strategies.
Tell you what, Ed, having a kid is one of the best ways to say no to events. I don't know if you found that, but we've definitely found that to be one of those. You definitely found that to be the case. Oh, sorry, can't make it. Sia's nap time.
Yeah.
Oh, got me back early because Sia's bedtime at 6.
Isn't Sia 13 years old now? Yeah, he's got to get a nap in.
Still teething. Okay, so I think initially I was going to ask what not to do, but I think we've kind of covered that through what you should be doing. I think a better question instead is, it's 2 parts here. What not to do if things don't go to plan, and what if you're not dieting? So let's assume you are in a maintenance phase, or in a potentially a muscle building phase. How would you approach it differently if that's the case? So let's cover off what not to do if things don't go to plan. So you come with every good intention, but when you get to the event, it all goes pear-shaped. What should you not do straight after?
I think you should do your best to mitigate the fire immediately versus making the fire larger. And so what I mean by that is, people do one thing one little thing goes a little bit pear-shaped. It's like, oh, I got the wrong meal delivered, or I had a bite of this and I didn't plan to have it. Accept the mistake, or accept that, okay, cool, I had this. I don't have to have the entire thing. You can stop yourself and go. The thing is, you just being like, pushing the effort button, or, I don't want to swear on the podcast, being behaved today, pushing the button that's like, who cares? Everything's done.
Oh, I thought you said effort.
By the way, you can't swear on this. Like this, that's not a PG podcast.
Can I?
It's
don't push the bucket button. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you've sworn on this podcast many times before.
Have I really?
You must have.
Yeah. Oh,
you're Australian. You definitely dropped the C-bomb at some point.
Yeah. So you don't want to push the fuck it button just because something goes a little bit wrong. You can just you can still make the evening productive. You don't have to go ballistic. Okay. You can always stop yourself in the moment and go, okay, this didn't go according to plan. That's okay. Be adaptable. You can still make the most of the situation. You having a slice of cake or half a slice of pizza is better than you having the entire pizza and then the Ben & Jerry's ice cream on the way home. Okay. You do not have to wait until the next day. You don't have to wait till Monday to start your diet again. You can literally pick up where you left off immediately and not worry about it. Just move on. That would be the biggest thing. Because I think I find for a lot of people, that whole practicing moderation is so much harder than abstinence. As I said earlier, everyone thinks they're an all or nothing person. No. You're not an all or nothing person. You just haven't learned how to practice moderation.
Mm.
Simple as that. And that this could be a good time for you to actually do that. I've had one member come to me, tell me that they were sort of a quarter way through a binge, and they actually stopped themselves. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do this. And they stopped. And in my opinion, I was like, that is actually super impressive to stop that early, right? So that would be one of the biggest things that I see, is that people make one little thing or something doesn't go according to plan, and they just relinquish the whole evening or the whole weekend or what have you. And then the second thing is excessively trying to fast or exercise the following day. I've been guilty of this, hand up here. Doing that type of thing, again, is only cementing a poor relationship with food. And I'm sorry, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to make up for how many excessive calories you had the previous night. Just don't worry about it. Get back on it. Just go to your normal, regular routine. Reflect on the evening and say, cool, what happened? What could I have done differently? This XYZ happened, meaning that the next time I need to be more aware of that. Then you use it as a bit of a learning tool, but don't just go the following day and just try to out cardio because you feel so guilty and you feel so disgusting. Like, it's not a good place to be.
And what if you're not dieting then? Because I think there'll be some people here who aren't actually interested in weight loss. They want to actually figure out how to maintain, but maybe even building some muscle. How do you navigate this period if that's you?
I don't think it's really that different, because if you're changing how you've been living, then you're probably still going to have the same barriers in terms of the chances are, if you were going crazy at Christmas and your mum's still going to notice you eating differently or whatever it is, you're still probably going to get some comments. Like I'm not in a fat loss phase right now. I get just as many comments now than as if I was in a fat loss phase, because it isn't really actually, like, you're still acting differently to everyone else. So I don't think that much is going to change. I think your calorie intake across the day is going to be higher because you're not in a deficit, you're either at maintenance or in a surplus. But the reality is that, for most of us, and especially like the kind of people we're working with RNT, that still isn't crazy calories, is maybe if you're like a new listener or something, and the stuff you've been watching on YouTube of, I don't know, like Nick Walker smashing like 6,000 calories a day or whatever, all this kind of stuff. Like, unfortunately, that's just probably, if you listen to this, you're just not one of them people. And the reality is that most of the kind of people we work with, maintenance still requires some level of consciousness and restriction on a certain level. Hopefully not feelings of restriction, but there has to be control around that. And same for even in a surplus, like most people that we're working with aren't eating 3,000 calories a day. And so if you're eating less than 3,000 calories a day, there's going to have to probably be some kind of control there, especially if you're eating out. And so not that much is going to change. As I said, you've got more calories, so you could, spend more of them, whatever, consume more of them when you are at an event potentially. But then it's probably going to be a case of, maybe you're in a fat loss phase, that one plate rule is lean protein source, the rest fruit and veggies. Yeah. Maybe you add a carb source to it. Maybe it doesn't have to be a lean protein source. It can be something a bit fattier, like a steak or a salmon or something like that. It's that kind of tweak. And, sorry, that's probably like killed a few people listening who we've all, as we've said, we've been there. I've tried to justify smashing food through Christmas because I'm bulking or whatever it is. It's just not actually required. And the density of calories in a lot of these kind of party foods mean that, you could eat 2,000-3,000 calories just at an event really easily. And if you were in a surplus at 2,500, well, that's going to be a lot of fat gain, I'm afraid.
I think it was a festive season in 2016 that I finally hit 91 kilos. I was like, this is it. I even thought, I was like, these are the opportunities I've got to get that scale weight above 91, because I wanted to see 200 pounds on the scale. And I used like this night, it was at a burger joint. I was like, this is the time. The next day I'm going to see it the next day. I'm going to see it the next day. Got chips, sodium, got the burger. And I just saw it the next day. Didn't last that long, but all I did was gain loads of extra body fat.
Example of what happens when you fixate on a number as your gauge of progress and behavior. Like, it's not that simple, right?
Yeah, I think the bottom line, it all comes down to changing the way you think. But sorry, Ed, I interrupted.
No, I was just going to say, behavior, how you think, exactly the same. It just means for most people, it's probably just going to eat a bit more carbohydrate events. But yeah, you can have a bit more food. But the main thing I think that needs to be like stressed here is like, it's not even like the progress thing. It's just getting used to those new behaviors, because even out past the fat loss phase, past consolidation, wherever you're acting in this new way. And like, at least from my perspective, it makes socials way more enjoyable because there's no anxiety beforehand. You're not stressing when you're there, and there's never regret afterwards. And you know, for me, the biggest driver is just like not having regret afterwards. And there's no food or like I'd rather have an awkward situation for 30 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever, or an awkward interaction, than regret that's then just kind of, you always, whenever you look back at that event, there's a level of regret there. And so I'd rather suck it up for those 2 minutes and not have the regret. And for me, that always outweighs it. But that is, it takes time, takes going through it for sure.
Fantastic. Well, the next goal at RNT is not till January now. The October-November one is fully booked. So that isn't to say that you can't make a change. So if you do want to get in touch and start rewiring your brain, even the idea of exploring the RNT journey is going to make you think differently coming into this festive season, then go to www.rntfitness.com/pro, send us an application, and we can see if it's a good fit. And until then, hope you all have a great festive period, and we'll catch you on the next one.